Hi, everybody. It's Nancy Reyes with For Your Canine.
And Joanne Soike with For Better, For Worse.
And Lisa Bataska with Canine Defined.
How are you all? Let us know you're there. Today, we're going to be talking about your environmentally sensitive dog. Um, I know this came up, somebody recommended we do this topic. I know they wanted it specifically for nose work, but we're going to kind of talk about it a little bit more in general about what to do with those, because those are sometimes in different dog sports or our pets, we tend to maybe not notice what's worrying them, or that there's an issue, or things like that. So we really are, we wanted to kind of just address it more in a general sense. Maybe at some point down the road we might do one specific to nose work, um but for tonight we're going to talk about it more in general, just environmentally sensitive, because right, there's different types of environmental sensitivities that we see or experience or dogs have. So I wanted to kind of address, there's a lot to address in a short time, so we're going to just kind of try to do the best we can to um, cover as much as we can from that. So any new interior, it's all new to me. Yeah, some dogs. So you guys, there's some dogs that are the most challenging one, and Joanne and Lisa can jump in. That environmental sensitivity is sound sensitivity. Don't you guys find that that seems to be a of all of the things that can be a problem in the environment? That's a big one.
Yeah, I think that's part of, I mean, there's so much to and totally dependent, right, on the dogs. It's
Yeah.
like sound. What about kinesthetic, touching different surfaces,
Right.
spatial awareness?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think that's definitely more of what we see
Sound, yeah.
overall.
In general life, yeah.
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 Um, but I'm with Lisa. I think sound's the easiest to see. It's the easiest to put two and two together, right? I think when you really talk, I think a lot of bites happen because of the kinesthetic sensitivities, right? And that's where, like, I didn't do anything. I just reached down to pet him, or I just grabbed his collar. Um, and yeah, I think nose work, we see a lot of the kinesthetic floors,
Yep.
right? Floors, tight spaces, don't leash touching, all that stuff.
Right.
Um,
But the noise one I find is challenging, um,
mhm.
because it definitely affects the nose work, but in life, because sometimes they hear things that we don't, and so by the time we figure out that it's something they heard or whatever, sometimes we missed it, because right, sometimes we don't even, like, if we're engrossed in something else, some of the you don't even notice that there was a siren or a truck backfiring or and things like that, right? So it becomes so by the time you acknowledge it or see it, it's already too
Mhm.
late, or the dog's already under stress.
I think, though, here's the other thing. Remember, a lot of this stuff is like, if we get dogs from breeders, the breeder should be doing certain things to help with this, right?
Mhm.
Although there's a genetic component to sound sensitivity, I think it's very, some of this could be preventable. But then the question is, when you have this, how do you address it? What do you do to help the dog through it, right? But I do think it's more. With the sound sensitivity, I think it comes from, it's natural. And I think here's the other, I think we don't recognize it until it becomes a training issue. But
Mhm.
every day you can see that behavior happening, and then you can dismiss it because it's not in the same environment that matters to you. You know what I mean? I
Yes,
think we get,
agree.
I think we get super. Other times we're like, well, they're fine, they recover. But the difference is, I think too, is that if I'm doing something and I'm very concentrated on it, and my dog hears something that distracts them, that's a big deal. You know what I mean? Because you don't. I question how much you are into it or persistent about what you're doing without addressing the other issues in the room. You know what I mean? That's happening.
Yeah. And I think when you talk that way, right, there's a lot of things like stacking triggers, stacking challenges, right? So I know Kim just made a comment about her Chihuahua competed yesterday and then she had a floor problem, but spooked in interiors, right? It was a small space. So perhaps if she didn't feel closed in, she would have still been worried, but been able to work it out, right? So the more we tack on top of the dog to have to deal with in a certain scenario, sometimes they're like, that one straw that broke the camel's back, that one's just too much.
Right.
Mhm. Right.
So I'll even give you one personally I'm dealing with. So my old girl, she's not that old. She's 11, but she's an old 11. The other day, so do you know how sometimes computer screens can give that quick little flash?
Mhm.
Right? I don't know if it's a power surge or like a static burst or something. So she was laying under my desk, and my computer did that, and she like exploded. Roadrunner couldn't run fast enough. And I was like, first of all, you didn't see it because you were under my desk. You're not touching any wires. You're not touching anything. Like, how did that happen? And I did notice her coat was very staticky.
Mm.
So I was like, huh. You know, it was just one of those moments of like, how did those two things connect?
Is she a kinesthetic type of dog? She likes touch.
She likes touch. Yes.
So she's highly aware of it and then potentially persistent on it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
She's one of those tugga. Yeah. I'm gonna whip my head back and forth, and it's hard for her to drop a tug type of stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you guys, a kinesthetic dog usually either enjoys or doesn't enjoy touch.
Yep.
And whether it's a dog that loves to be handled and touched, it will transfer pretty easily too. Like they'll be okay in tight spaces, but a dog that really doesn't like to be handled and touched in nose work, they don't like the tight spaces or the leash touching, like Joanne said, and all those kind of things. So it's one of those things that you want to be aware of it, right? So to kind of go by kind of going by the noise is challenging. So depending on how much it affects so dogs can be noise sensitive and have a problem with thunderstorms and fireworks, but not any other noise, right? It just could be that. Like that doesn't, just because they're afraid of thunderstorms or whatever, doesn't always mean they're going to be worried about other sounds. Does that make sense? So
yeah, but I also think there's isn't there like an element of pressure in the air, right?
Yep.
That potentially the dogs can read off of, right? And so that is the stuff I think you need to be super aware of. And if you're planning on trialing and it happens to rain, be ready to say, okay, are we going to try to work through this? Is it fair to my dog, number one being, and then are we going to work through this number two? And then am I willing to walk away? Like, you know, in some cases, it's just not worth it to the individual dog. Right. And people need to recognize that too. So if your dog is tormented or really concerned, you know, I think that's something you want to pay attention to determine, like, how stressful is it to him or her to do this job when he's under that kind of concern.
Right. And go ahead, Joanne.
Well, I was just going to say one other thing about thunderstorms, because that's always such a topic, right? It's it's so hard to watch, and we do our best to help. But one of the things about thunderstorms, if you have that dog, that I would absolutely challenge you, is it the thunder or is it the flash?
Right.
Because I used to think it was the thunder, a dog that I had previously, and it really was the lightning flash. So I didn't notice it until one night. It was literally just a silent lightning storm, and she freaked. And I was like, well, what do you know about that?
So do you think it was, here's my question. Do you think it was the flash is predictive of a bang and she was so conditioned to it that she responds off the flash, right? When you start really peeling everything apart, like, is it truly visual? Is it
right? And do you know how I knew?
You know what
because we had a daytime storm and there was no visible lightning and there was thunder all over the place. And she's like, I don't care.
Isn't that crazy interesting when you peel that apart?
So you have to ask the right questions to know. Yes. And this is where it gets so tough, because we go, oh, they're thunderstorm phobic. And you're like, yeah, but which part?
Right. Is it the noise? Is it the pressure? Is it the noise? Is it the pressure? Is it
The
the
static,
sound? Right,
the
right.
sound, the light. Yeah. Like,
Yeah, it really matters because and sometimes even if your dog isn't worried about sound thunderstorms, they can develop it later. Um, but and again, just because you have a noise sensitive dog, like um, a noise, I know. You have a noise sensitive dog. Like here, Courtney says her dog has no issue with storms and fireworks, but hates the sound of the agility teeter. Right.
Yeah.
So that really tells you it's a different type of noise. And the thing is, whether you do, and I think we all can agree, if your dog has a worry about any kind of environment, ideally you need to work on it first before you put him in that trial situation. If you don't, work on it, or if you don't address it prior to, it's just going to make the whole competition, whatever you're doing, agility, nose work, whatever, it's just going to make it unfun, not fun for either one of you, especially for the dog. So you need to, if your dog is worried about thunderstorms and it is the noise, and you go to a trial, you need to be able to have a plan on board to be able to help your dog deal with it, whether that means having something for the dog, or like Lisa said, well, it's a bad storm, we're just not going to do well, and I'm not going to put the dog through it, and you're going to go home, right? Whatever that plan is. But ideally you want to have worked on it at some point prior to going to a show, to a trial or whatever.
yeah. And I'm just going to say this. Sorry, Lisa. Everything that we know up until this point, right? What do? You throw cookies at it, right? It helps. That will help with a little bit of desensitization, habitualization, right? But if you
your dog feel safe in that situation, right?
Yeah.
If your dog feels safe, then cookies are okay.
Yeah. But if they don't feel safe, which I'm going to tell you is most of what I see, cookies can be even more pressure. Right. Yep. And they're not a fix. Like, you may think like the dog can handle it better with cookies, but we're not really fixing it. We're just, it's sort of like, I know there's a snake, but look at the pretty sparkles over here. Right?
Don't look behind the curtain.
So it's just, don't get frustrated when you're like, the cookies aren't working, because, it's a safety matter. I don't want to eat cookies if I don't feel safe, and neither does your dog.
Right. So. And that's what and then you guys hit upon it. Ideally, you want safety is number one to all animals.
Yes.
All, us, them, all animals. It's number one. If your dog isn't safe, doesn't feel safe, then
he cannot learn.
It doesn't matter. Like Joanne says, you can throw cookies at it till the day is long. It's not going to matter. So you have to make sure that dog feels safe in that environment and is comfortable in that situation. Whether that means you give it support or whatever, or treats, maybe help it make it better, or whatever, and sometimes, and this is why for noise sensitivity, usually is, depending on the anxiety, how anxious the dog is, because noise is almost impossible to get away from, right? There's, cars and dogs that tend to be really, really noise sensitive. Sometimes that's where sometimes you have to, put them on medication, because unfortunately the noise, the problem with the noise is so, anxiety producing, and just there's nothing you can do. And I know, I think it's been a little while, right, Joanne, that we had the guy with the guy from Ohio State about the hearing and all that.
The audiologist. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And he did a really great talk on that. And they do have, for severe cases, they had little ear things that you can put on the dogs and stuff, like dogs that tend to be really, really noise sensitive. But sometimes, and it has to be a specific one, because there is a specific drug for that affects just for here. It's called Cilio, right? Cilio.
Yeah.
Cilio gel. Yeah, Cilio gel.
Cilio gel.
Well,
but,
and the other one that I think is interesting, they've remarketed it a little bit, because Purina came out with Calming Care, right? And that was a probiotic strain that was targeting auditory sensitivities, and I think they've seen so much expansion in what it helps. Now they're not marketing it for auditory anymore, but I will tell you that is a supplement. I have a generalized anxiety dog, and he is on it, and I do start the border collie on it in May, right, to get a good buildup of that, because fireworks are like death in our house. So it's just hard to watch.
Yeah. Mhm.
So
And I think also the other thing that's worth mentioning is that it's not just the actual sound, but it's the decibel in which the
Yes.
dogs hear it, right?
Mhm.
So, I would imagine, just thinking from a neuroscience aspect in the brain, like it would change. You would take one drug to affect a specific part of that, right? And then the decibels might be something different. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's kind of interesting when you really think about it. It's like, how does that get helped for those
Mhm.
individual dogs?
So I just put the links for the Cilio and the Common Care from Purina. You can get that.
Chewy.
The Common Care is a holistic, which I've also used. Tango, and that I've also used. So one of the things you want to consider too is, you can work on some of this noise sensitivity. Excuse me one second.
Yeah, you could work on the noise sensitivity, right? But I think it also depends on if, like, how severe, if it's a safety issue and they're terrified, you're not going to be able to necessarily counter condition it and desensitize it by playing it at low levels, right? I think it just depends on the severity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like what Lisa mentioned earlier, right? The decibels. So think about it. Let's say you have a dog that goes nuts on cars, right? It's like, it's fine. It's fine with the little, Kia tiny car, and it's fine with a Ford Taurus. And then the pickup truck goes by and it goes nuts, right? Or vice versa. It's okay with, cars and trucks, and then you get one of those little tiny like kid mopeds like that go by and they go nuts on those, right? So it really is sometimes particular to the decibel of the engine.
Yeah.
And haven't you guys experienced that, where sometimes people are like, my dog only responds to white vans? And I'm like, okay, what's a white van? You know what I mean? Because if you talk about like the old 70s vans, right? And stuff like that, they do have a different sound because their motor's different. And you know what I mean? And I think they use them a lot for just like housework around the place. You know what I mean? So you see a lot of helping, stuff like that. But and some of the, I remember somebody telling me that. I'm like, that's interesting. I wonder. And so she tracked everything, and yeah, it turned out to be white vans, and it were older models. So it was kind of crazy interesting. But kudos for the owner for like really paying attention to that, right? It solved a mystery for her.
Right. So Lori also recommended, I've also had some good luck with the Comshen, the Herbsmith stuff, but that's been hit or miss as well. It depends on the dog. But then again, anything, and whether it's medication or homeopathics, it's always it may work, it may not.
So I just want to say something about that, because just because one thing doesn't work, don't be like nothing helps. Like, you sometimes have to go through the gamut because dogs process things differently. So sorry, go ahead, Nancy.
Absolutely. Well, it's same with us, right? Sometimes we'll try like something that Joanne might recommend. Oh, you should try this, and I tried. I'm like, it didn't really help, or that helped a lot. And maybe something it didn't really work that well, but that's kind of how it is with that stuff. The other thing too is sometimes you have to put them. It's a lot of work to help your dog through it, so it takes some time. And I think part of the issue is people get impatient. So like I had, like Joanne was mentioning, a dog that's reactive to cars. I did have one, Lucy. Was extremely reactive, and sounds and trucks and stuff would really set her off. And so, for a long time, I would go to the school over here, by my house, and there was not too many cars until I can get her to the curb with one or two cars passing. But I would go far away where she could handle it and she felt safe. And we did, the car's there, but it's okay. And I reinforced her, and she liked food, thank goodness. And she felt safe in that moment. And then until it took a long time for me to be able to come to get close to work out and be on the curb while a car's passing, for her not to react. And then I could do busier streets. And remember at Melrose, Lisa, she still had a very difficult time. It was much, much better, by then, but it was months and months and months and months of doing that, like getting her used to it. It's, and working on it on a more regular basis, because she, trucks, especially, she was able to handle cars passing at that location, but trucks, it was really hard for her. So, but it takes time. And I think what happens, people try to rush it. Like, well, he's fine with this noise, so let's try, you know what I mean? And it's like, no, you have to, it takes that particular, I found, takes quite a long time for it to desensitize a dog to noise and things like that. And also have some exercises, or, a plan to be able to get them past it, right? Get them past the noise or refocus if they're out doing something.
In some cases, you can't, because that is an inheritable trait, right? So
yes,
you have to also think about, like, and weigh the balance of play this game, or if my dog's having a very hard time, I'm not going to do it. So, like, having that serious consideration about who the individual dog is, right? And I had I had Fender, and Fender was Lucas's son. And of course, when Fender came along with his litter, I was like, oh, it's his son, and I have to keep him. And, there was an opportunity for him to go somewhere else. And the person who was a Frisbee person decided no, based upon what he was seeing. And I'm like, okay. And Fender turned out to be very sensitive and soft. And if I got upset, he'd be like, okay, I quit. And he'd move away. And at that time in my life, I was like, what's wrong? You're Lucas's son. So my expectations were different, right? And I'm like, oh man, that's not cool. So, like, as I grew older and learned whether or not it was important to me to play agility with him, which later on I said, okay, we're not going to do agility. We're going to do fly ball, because it's a pattern game and maybe the patterns would help him. Well, little did I realize he had arthritis in his wrists. And I was asking him to do this. So you know what he did? He quit bouncing. He's like, no, I don't want to do that, but I'll do the recall chase with the grab to the toy. And I'm like, okay, but I listened to him and stuff like that. And part of me, like, kicks my own butt for the fact that I didn't accept it when I saw it a few times before. Right. And I think is when you get older, you start saying, you know what I mean? And everybody's different. Like, everybody has a different experience. I'm saying that was my experience. And for me, that was a profound moment where I was like, how important is this, right? For this individual dog. So,
yeah. Well, and I think too, sometimes, we all do that, right? We're like, no, maybe that was a one-off or whatever. So, right. So we keep at it, and then until we really, but we're looking for it and watching for it to make sure that what we're seeing was right the first time, right? Because even us, that we've done a lot of it, we still, like, did I see that correctly? Did I observe did I see what I thought I saw? So with noise sensitivity, depends on the level of sensitivity that the dogs have. And, sometimes for those of you who do dog sports, you might just have to go to maybe a trial and sit there and see if your dog can handle just being there. Don't ask them to do anything. Just, can you be there? Can you handle the noises? Can you handle that? Because if they can't do that, I really would probably putting them in a trial, especially agility, with the teeter noises and all the noises that come with it. Because sometimes they're fine in class, but when you take them into a trial where it's really busy and a lot of noise, it can be a little overwhelming. So doing all those things are really, really important, that you give the dogs that ability. And then, and again, you're always looking for the dog feeling safe. And usually if a dog is very food motivated, dogs that feel safe and more comfortable, animals, not just dogs, animals, if they're feeling safe, they'll play and they'll eat. right? So
Mhm.
those two things will happen. If they're not wanting to, like you're saying, come on, buddy, let's play ball or let's tug. They're like, nope, that's a big tip off, or they don't want to eat. It's like maybe he doesn't like these treats. Well, maybe he might be worrying about other things. So it's
But
something to
haven't you seen dogs who, where you give them a cookie, they're like, thanks, but I'm looking at something else. Thanks, but I'm looking at, you know what I mean? You've seen those dogs.
Or
Like,
my favorite is they're like, excuse me. Excuse me.
when the
Did
question
you
is,
get
are
that
they
out of my
really
face?
nervous?
Yeah.
Are they really nervous, or like, hey, I'm watching a show. Wait a second. Thank you, but
yes,
I'm watching a show. You know what I
right.
mean?
Right. And you could, and again, noise sensitivity is coupled with a little bit of anxiety. They're worried about it versus, you know, trying to look look around you. Um, so, taking it slow for the noise sensitivity is really, really, really important. And depending, like Lisa said, depending on the severity of the case and how bad it is, you might need to, um, you know, um, not, not do it or
So
slow
I'm
down.
I'm really curious. We had a question there. Jody Thompson.
Yep.
I would not counter condition sounds with my dog if I could do it over again. I made it a thing
Yep.
that she now overreacts to.
Yep.
Mhm.
So I
That
read
goes
that
into
question.
training methods, right? So counter
Yeah.
conditioning can go, you got to be careful. You got to read. And that's why it all comes down to, when you're working with dogs, read the dog's response before determining your next training step. Like,
Right.
most people are like, no, this is what we're told to do. This is how we do it. And I get that piece, or at least what I deal with. But at the same time, it's just because so-and-so trainer told you this, that, this, or this, or that. For
Mhm.
me, it's like, how well does that trainer read body language? How well does that trainer know? And I'm not saying there aren't trainers out there that do this already in mainstream media. But what I am saying is, like, regardless of what trainer tells you that, what does the dog say about it? Because
Yeah.
you know what? That's the only thing that matters, right?
Yeah.
They
And I'm
matter.
just
The
betting.
response matters.
I'm
Right.
just betting reading that you used a lot of cookies.
Yes. Yes.
Right. And that now the dog, like, we used cookies to get them through something they weren't enjoying. And now they don't even enjoy the cookies when they, right. So
Right.
that's a tough one, right? Because you're like, I thought I was doing the right thing, right? I thought I
Because
was
that
doing
was
it,
the
and now I
advice.
made it worse.
Mhm.
Well, I'm not going to lie. So I have Cadence, who's 6 ish, and
Oh yeah.
she's like, and so she hates to have her nails done. And me holding her, restraining her, even if I did it as a puppy, she did not enjoy it. So that goes um, from the term dogs, certain dogs, like protection dogs, they don't like to be held down. But, that goes from like a breed thing to a individual thing, right? From maybe as a whole, they may not like to be restrained, but each individual dog is different. It's a whole nother thing, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, because I have a
So
shepherd
it's
that
like,
all he wants to do is be touched. So
right.
it's
Well, that's the breeder you got him from. Isn't that what you breed for?
taking his blood. He goes, oh, they're touching me. It's awesome. I'm like, okay, weirdo.
Funny.
So
But yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to take a minute too. I know we talked about like supplements and stuff, but one of the new things that I am very, very getting into are flower essences. So they're not aromatherapy oils, they're lighter. So basically, a flower essence takes a natural flower or shrub or something, right? They soak it overnight when it's in full bloom so that whatever's the properties are in it, the energy that's in it is transferred into the water, and then it gets preserved, usually with an alcohol or a glycerin. No, not Bach, Amy.
Not Bob.
They don't preserve their stuff.
And they use a lot of alcohol.
Yep. So, but there's 2 companies. One I can't remember, but the one that I like is FES. It's Flower Essence Services. And anyway, they have this formula that's called Fearless. And I started using it. Whoever earlier said something about the car, the dog has anxiety in the car. I have that too. And so they're very light. They don't have side effects like potentially an aromatherapy oil can have when you use them too much. But so they're super duper light. They're water based, and I have just found amazing results. And again, like it's me and my dog. We found really good results with it. But if you haven't tried a flower essence, and this formula called Fearless, it's for composure and containment when challenged by fear, anxiety, or panic. So I sometimes feel like maybe that's a good start for a situational thing, or like spray your pillow with
Right.
it during a thunderstorm, or spray it in the crate in the car, just put it on their collar in general if you're going to a place. I'm not saying it's going to help everything, but I feel like it's a good base that's going to
Mhm.
kind of do no harm.
Right. And actually, Kim Howitt, she was on for she was on maybe a year ago. She does a lot of those flower essences, and she would be a good go-to if that's something you're interested in possibly doing, because she she deals with all of the above, and they and different she can customize stuff for you as well. So um I have to find her.
I got
I'll find
Oh,
her
I'm sorry.
information, but she's. I will. Yep, that's it. FES Flowers. And then, and if you're looking for, there's people who do like a lot of that flower essence stuff, and Kim does, because she's helped a few of our clients with different things. And again, every organism responds differently to everything, but it's a like Joanne says, it's a do no harm, and you might be able to help your dog along. And so to be clear, a lot of the supplements and things that we recommend is so that you can do the work to help the dog get through some of the issue, right? It's not that just give it to them and it's going to be all better, because that's it doesn't work like that. That's true of uh anything you give, any, like if you're taking a diabetes medicine, well, it works only if you also follow a diet and a lifestyle change and all that stuff. Otherwise, you just take the meds, it's not going to make any difference. Because I think that's a piece that people forget. Oh, we're just going to give them this, but yeah, but you have to do all the
The work
all
in
the
between.
all the work, right? All the stuff, right? So like with Lucy, I did use some holistic stuff, but I did a lot of the work, a lot of the kind of conditioning. And again, you have to, and this is where you have to learn how to read it, right? Are you, um, is the dog comfortable, and are you moving too fast? It's better to go a little slower than too fast,
Mhm.
and you probably, you got to be paying attention how the dog is responding. Is the dog really relaxed? Because a lot of times, I think if they're just taking cookies, that's what we think. Oh yeah, that's it. It's like, no, it's, yeah, is he taking cookies, but is he relaxed? Is he chilled? Is he, what does that look like? And if it's your own dog, you should know what your dog looks like when it's relaxed and when it's not. So you have to do all the work, right? And for some dogs, just playing it quietly in the background in their regular life. That's kind of how I got my shepherd used to the tennis balls, because she would get so excited about them. So I just put him in the environment, and then it wasn't a thing. So same with sound, but it's got to be low, and the dog's got to be comfortable. And if they're in their home and they're comfortable, that might be a place to start. Really easy and quiet, not blaring and all that kind of stuff. So you can use some of the supplements and all that to help the dog relax, but you're going to have to do the work to help the dog get past some of that stuff. Otherwise, you know, it's you're just throwing stuff at it, and it's like, oh, it doesn't work. Well, no, not if you're not going to do anything to follow up and get the behaviors you want, right? You have to actually do the training. And so then, if the other thing is kinesthetic, which um talk about the work. Oh, sure. So for example, like I said, with the noise with my min pin, I gave her something to help relax her. We went to the park. I was like in the beginning 40 feet from the curb and from the car passing. It was far. And if she was able to handle seeing the car, hearing the car, checking back with me, she got reinforced for that. And as long as she was, and then we would do a couple of those and then come back in. Then eventually we'd get closer to the curb where there was a car would come every so often. And as long as she didn't react to the car, and I didn't lure her with the treat. We kind of hung out. We sat there. If she saw the car and she checked back with me, then I gave her the cookie. I didn't, because that's what a lot of people do. That's kind of not, you want to get the behavior, then reinforce it, not lure it. Because if you're luring it, then you're not really fixing it, right? You're going to wait for the dog to be comfortable, relax. Can you look at that? And I don't use look at that. I just mean if they're looking at it and they're able to check back in, they acknowledge that there's a thing there, but they're going to check back in with me and we're going to hang out and just do or just be. And again, it's not a constant, because that's what people do. Just feed, 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 feed. And you're not really letting the dog make a choice and give them an option, which is, I think, how a lot of the counter conditioning is misused. They're just luring the dog. And if the dog is reacting from the distance, then you're too close. You need to move away, not give them more cookies, right?
Yeah, I know Jennifer also said earlier, right? Interior spaces and floors. So I know what I've done with floors. I did use cookies, but I sat in a chair and I had it was a tiny, tiny bathroom, right? So I basically just put some cookies near the bathroom with the door open, right? And then maybe one was in where they didn't have to touch it, but they could reach in. Right. And then they get to go away and then they came back and then maybe one put one toenail in. But I was never, ever like, go get that cookie. Do you see that cookie? Go get that cookie. Right. Because you're pressuring the dog into doing something they're already worried about. If they don't eat it, they don't eat it. Leave 7 cookies on the bathroom floor. It's fine. Right. They're telling you, yeah, I see the food. I don't want to do that. I don't care. Right. But again, if you just, bring your phone, bring a book, just hang there and be present with your dog. You can pet them, you can have a hand on them, you can do all the things. Don't go get it, ready, get it, right? And always relieve the pressure too. So it's not constantly go farther. Now you got a toe, go farther. It's like, oh my God, you did one toenail. Now run down the hallway. Okay, now run back and let's see if we can just put our nose in again and then run down the hallway. Let's see if we can do a toenail, run down the hallway. Can you do 1 foot pad, run down the hallway? Can you eat one outside the door? Right. So it's not just this constant, that was good, do more. That was good, do more. That was good, do more. It's this big
back and forth
on the scale.
Cha-cha.
Yeah. And don't always do where you left off. Back off, do some, back off, do some. So,
because as Amy was saying, the dog sets the pace, right? That's what I mean by read the dog to determine, is this too much? But I also think people understand what tolerating looks like is very different than what I think functional tolerance is, right? Because they're still not feeling so overwhelmed that they can still perform to do certain things. Okay, I'm not comfortable, but I'm going to do it because you asked me to. And I think there's a genetic component to it from a temperament standpoint, but also I think that, us reading the dog to say how much is too much and I'm going to back off, right? So it was interesting today, and if you guys want, I can show you this. There's a German Shepherd I worked with. He was a dog that was part of this U-Haul 7 and Hobart, whatever. So I worked with him today, and it was very interesting. But I can show you splitting attention. His was environmental because he was out and outside, but I think it's more sociable confidence as well, right? So I wonder how much of that is, what's affecting him. So whether it's, there's people and dogs, he'll still react, and he'll yell and pull. But when I first see him, he's such a long wick that I'm like, that's interesting. And he was able to do it with cookies. So he's not super biddable, or, you know what I mean? Not like, oh, I'll do whatever you say. He'll still do it with cookies. So I thought that was interesting, if you think that would be relative to kind of replying to Amy's.
Yeah, let's see it.
Okay. And he is like 1.5 to 2 years old. So
So yeah, and so the thing is, I think that's the big problem we have with counter conditioning is they're luring a lot, they're putting a lot of pressure on the dogs, and they're just not able to, uh, and they don't want to quit while they're ahead. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
In many
Yeah.
cases.
So, and this lady is very committed to her dog. So I thought it was super cool that he landed in her home because she's very clear. So anyway, here we go. I turned the volume off. So when I first walked into this, I pulled up. I was standing there. I didn't know they were out for a walk. I came down. I spotted him. I'm like, oh, you must be so and so, and your dog so and so. And so, and she was like further away from me than this. He was already locked on visually and persistent. She couldn't get him to stop. So she turned him around and so forth. So I said, put him up. I'm going to sit in the car, put him up. I don't want to rehearse this kind of behavior. So this is after I said, get some cookies. Let's work on some orientation and then some eye contact. And I like the orientation because it makes it so simple for the dog to build. And that's that up and down game, the pattern game by Leslie McDivitt. I like it because it breaks it down so simple for the dog to be right. So I said, okay, yeah, you say yes, you drop the cookie by your feet. And he was still aware of everything, but he was able to split attention, which was way different than when I saw him, the first time. Because she didn't have cookies and she had him on a pinch. She does too still now. But we were working on that. And I said, okay. And then giving a direction how close to come. But this particular video, I mean, if you look at it, it's like 10 minutes of work with this dog and then sussing him out and realizing, she said, oh, if he sees you in the house right now, he's going to charge you. I'm like, please, let's not let him out then. Let's not rehearse that behavior. So I said, okay, I'm going to go out in the car. Let's start here. And I just don't feel like this dog was ever taught, like he knows basic behaviors. He knows sit, he knows down, he's responsive to training. And it seems like somebody has worked with him before, but they never taught him. They taught him book smart stuff, but not street smart stuff, right? Like how to check in, how to self-modulate, how to work through some of these challenges, right?
So the other thing that Lisa mentioned, she said that going in the house would probably not be a good idea. So right there, you make a decision. Well, you're going to work outside where there's more space and the
Right.
dog is more comfortable. Otherwise, where Amy was talking about overfacing, that you can easily overface the dog if you go in their house because it's such a small space. And even still, moving a few feet closer is hard for this dog already, right? He's already like, I don't know about that. You're kind of right there, right?
And in this case, mom wanted to move closer. I'm like, no, not yet. We have
Right.
to wait a minute. He has to be more into you than checking out the environment and looking to me, oh, what she's saying. And I'm talking, by the way, you could tell and if you look at his face, like he's like, what's happening? I don't get it. He's not what I would consider an aggressive dog. I think he's more of a dog who just doesn't have the skill set. Like he was never taught that. Because by the way, when this happened, when the dogs were found and some of them passed away in the truck, not far from here, he was one of the ones that made it. And then I don't know.
Pause?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Keep talking, but push pause on this because I want to go back.
Okay.
Keep talking.
So what happened was they ended up, I don't know if he was in a foster home or if he was in the rescue in the shelter. And it's a municipal shelter, by the way. So everything's taken in. And so, if he was in the municipal shelter for 7 months, like he was there because they were going through a case, like that's quite resilient considering he didn't go nuts, right? That's a long time for a shepherd to be in a shelter, right?
Mhm.
But then the other part is like, I feel like he was taught things to do and cued, but not an offered or I have opportunity or the ability to choose what I want to do.
Oh, there's no agency there. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Can you go back on this about 20 seconds? This was so beautiful. I really want to just show it to people, right? So he was doing good. He's doing good. She's like, look at how good he's doing, right?
Yep. Yep.
And then because he's not reacting, because he looks a little softer, right? He's able to check in with mom and do his thing, right? What does the human want to do?
Push.
Move forward. He's doing
Yep.
so good, right? And so then she's going to take her couple of steps where she's like, look, it's awesome. Let's go forward, right? And hopefully.
And I said, no, not yet.
And she's like, I'm
We did
gonna.
a little bit.
Now watch. 1.
See when
Yep.
you
Two,
how many
3,
steps did you how many
4.
steps did you take before she lost him?
Right. And 4 seconds she lost him. Now that doesn't seem like a lot, but based on what he was check in, check this.
Right.
Check in, look at that. It was much smoother where he got locked on her, right?
Right.
People who don't 100% get dog behavior, right? We're like, yeah, but he didn't bark. He did great. He didn't do great. He showed you he was sticky.
Yep.
And so because he didn't have bark or have an eruption or do all the things that you normally see, look
And
at
this
how
is
long
the
that's
sticky part right here.
Yep.
That's all
Yep.
Brian.
so right. So we and because he didn't bark, what's the human gonna do?
And to be fair, I was
Before we
like,
go-
okay, let's see if this dog can recover, and you need to jackpot the crap out of what he's doing every time he orients to you, right? And then she was able to recapture him. Now, mind you, what you don't understand is off to the person's right side, there's a man gardening and picking up poop and everything, probably about the same proximity on the other side of me with this dog. And that's when I was like, so when I first saw this dog, and I'll tell you, because sometimes we draw conclusions before we know more. And when I saw this dog, I'm like, oh crap, this dog is so persistent on visual. And he can't recover. Although mom wasn't giving him information, the thing that caught my eye was the fact that he was on a prong and he wasn't pulling. And I'm like, isn't that interesting? And so then I was like, get the hot dogs. And she's like, oh, he's very food motivated. I'm like, what? Let's use that, right?
Mhm.
Let's see if that helps. And for this guy, he did pretty good. So we did a few reps of this. And I was like, he's toasted. You get the idea. She has the technique down. And I'll be sending this to her with all the verbiage in it so she has a point of reference, right, on why. But look at how much he's like, all right, I looked at her. Now what? Right. And the difference in his personality is great. Now, mind you, to this time, I was like, him and I are not friends. And it doesn't matter if we're friends because guess what? He lives with you. I really don't care if the dog loves me. I care if the dog stays in its home. And so she's like, okay, I go, in the meantime, you manage and prevent rehearsal of behaviors. Secondly, you work on this stuff. But
Right.
look at how much more he's thinking, right? He's like, is it this? And then look at you. What are we doing? What is this about?
He is,
Yeah.
but people push this until the dog
Yes.
explodes and then you get mad. So it's like, right, this is like, now go away and think about all you just learned, buddy.
Right.
Right.
And
then we're
And we do. Yep.
Right.
And then we're going to start again back from where you started, not from where
Yes.
we ended.
Right.
And this was the end of it because then I was like, we are done. I liked what I saw. It gives me more information about who this individual is and how we can work with him. And there you go.
Yeah. And that's, I think, what people miss, no matter what your dog's environment is sensitive to, people, because people is tough. And there's other techniques for dogs that are people, that are concerned about people that you can use because, changing the way the dogs feel about people and people is almost as challenging as noise because you can't control them. They show up, they pop up, so that can become a big, it's a big issue. So there's, stuff to work on that. But the big thing for the environmentally sensitive is really figuring out what is really bothering the dog. And the other thing I wanted to address, and because sometimes we think, oh, they're reactive, they're sensitive to, I don't know, a bus or whatever. And if you're wrong about that, you are going to already start reacting when you see a bus because you're going to think the dog is reacting to the bus or they're going to worry about it. So you already are drawing your attention to that particular object, that particular thing. So sometimes we also can increase that sensitivity, kind of a little bit what somebody mentioned about the counter conditioning, that now it's even worse. We've highlighted it. That's why I like, the look at that, is concerning, because for some dogs, like I have shepherds, they don't, drawing their attention to stuff is not something that really I would like to do. I just watch to see what does get my dog's attention. What draws his attention? Because sometimes it's not what I think it is, right? A lot of people think it's this. Well, no, it's actually, this or something else.
I also think it's up for interpretation, right? So if you're good at reading body language, if my dog is worried, let's say they're worried, but they're inquisitive, but they're not socially confident, right, in the situation. They can look at it, you can say yes and get a cookie. And then you do that for a little bit to see if you can affect the emotional idea behind that. And then you wait, right, to see what the dog does. So I think I think with training or different techniques, there is a place for it, because sometimes we get stuck. I'm like, this dog isn't doing what typically happens. Like, what can I do? And this is why trainers, I think, need to have multiple tools in the toolbox, right? And that's why I think continuous education is important, not because I'm going to jump into somebody's camp that I may or not believe in, but just because I think it's staying up to date in current in your craft, right?
Mhm.
But I think the look at that can help, but you have to know, it has to be understood why you're doing, like the reason why the dog is. It can, but I honestly, like you, I do more of the auto check-in and the
Yep.
unprompted solicited behavior. If I'm building confidence for a dog, depending, I might try to look at that, but if it's not headed down the path I want, I'm going to try something different.
Yeah,
Right.
and I have one that's not even, I don't know, nobody ever talks about it. So right or wrong, it works for me. I have one that's a little, I don't know, dog reactive, I guess would be the category that he fits in, but really it's more just of an uncertainty. Like I don't know what's happening, right? And so he gets defensive. So he in and of himself does the look at that. He's like, oh, there's a dog. And I just wait for a second and see what he does, right?
Yeah.
And if he's like, you could just tell he's like, I'm not sure what to do about that. If I don't have cookies on me, I have used a verbal, right? Where I'm like, mind your own business, right? And for me, it's a lighthearted, it's not a correction. It's just a verbal that, my leash stays loose, my body stays light, mind your own business. And he's like, oh, okay.
Thank
sure.
God. Thank you.
Right? Like just like that extra assurance, like I see it too. It doesn't concern us. Don't worry about it.
Well, and the thing is, you let him know, you wait till he tells you what the issue is.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
difference, right? It's the difference. You let him, because I think that's what we have to be better observers of our dogs, because it's like you need to make sure that you are, that what's causing the issue, not that you're just making assumptions that that's what it is, because you
Mhm.
might think it's this, and we do this as trainers, right? It's like, oh, my dog's this and that, and so we figure it out and test it out and see, be sure, like Joanne said earlier, is it this or is it that? Is it the light? Is it the sound? Is it the pressure? What is it that's causing the issue? It's really important that we're really addressing the right thing. And as trainers, when people come to us, they say, well, we're having this issue, and we test it out to be sure that, okay, is it really that, or is it something else? In many cases, yeah, the handlers are right, but in some cases, not so, you know what I mean? Not so much. And sometimes they're like, it's really this, it's not something else, right? So it's really important that you're clear about what bothers your dog. Like in Amy's case, it's very clear that it's people. It's no question that her dog is worried and sensitive about people. Sound gets her attention, but doesn't throw her off balance as much as people do, right? So it's there, but it's not a big problem. So this little dog is he's doing nose work. We're trying to build his confidence. And now, mind you, he's now on meds, because he was and he's been here many times before, but having a very difficult time adjusting. So he's we have to his environment, and he is still, this is not fixed by any stretch, right? Because to Joanne's point, it, you know, even if they're able to do it, doesn't mean that it's okay. And this is a really good example of that. So he's very sensitive. The hide is here, and well, he goes ahead and finds it, right? So everybody's like, "Oh, that's great, right? That's perfect." But no, he's not really wanting to eat the cookie off the thing. He dropped the food. So while by all intents and purposes he looks great, the truth of the matter is he's not great. He's not super comfortable in this environment. This is something we're still working on. And you can tell the way he moves through space. It's very, very, you know, he's a little worried and he's not, you know, he's
pacing.
yeah, well, and he's also not put together super great, but yeah, but see, he looks to mom and still, and this now, mind you, he's been here many, many times, lots of shake-offs. So, you know, we're still trying to find a better balance for this dog. So we're trying not to overface him. And even in this case, even in this environment, it's he looks, you know, it's too much for him for sure. You know what I mean? So while it looks like, oh, he found it, doesn't mean that he's, you know, because here, if you just look, if I show you just the snippet, you know, he looks great. He found it, you know, he went in there and he did his thing. But asking him to do more, he just can't. Right? Got a little tail wag. So just if you saw just that, you would think, oh, it's fine, but it's not fine. It's absolutely not fine. and the rest of it, he had a very difficult time. We had to abort that, the rest of the search, even though in that one he started really well. Or, you know, he started better, not well, better. But so you see how it's a process. We're still that for that particular dog, if he's, you know, he's been on holistic, he's been on, and it's still, you know, it's still a big process, and outside is very challenging, so he hasn't been outside, so it's a slow process. Luckily he has a lovely mommy that takes real good care of him and makes sure he's going to be happy, and she's okay if he's not going to be happy doing nose work, right? Because sometimes that's the answer is no. Right now that's helped him in his regular life. Nose work he goes for walks, he's happier, he's really happy at home and all that, and maybe that, you know, so we're going to try a different, you know, meds. So yeah, Amy, he's not so much worried about people as much as noise, and my place is very noisy. So even though we changed his class time to a quieter time so that hopefully he can, you know, handle that better, where there's not that much going on. But he does, you know, he's not super friendly about people, but he doesn't seem to mind them as much as he does the noise and the activity. And he's in a class during the day where there's not that much going on, but there's still enough activity that he pays attention to it. So right. So this handler, while we're trying to do nose work to help him build his confidence, it may or may not be the right answer, right? You're always kind of checking it because he's still pretty scared, right? Pretty worried in that. I mean, it's better, but it's not, you know, and we want to see a lot more motivation and a lot more, you know, relaxation in the dog's body. He's never going to be a speed demon, but you want him to look and be more relaxed, you know, more relaxed in the environment. And so that's what that in nose work, when we see that, and I know Joanne and I have seen it a lot, that, well, he's fine in class. No, that's not fine. That would not be a fine dog. You know, I wouldn't say he's fine. he still needs a lot more where he's more comfortable and more relaxed, and he's happier. But this dog's taking a little longer. Yeah, Amy, Solar, it helps Solar, but this particular dog, Walter's having a little harder time. He's not progressing as quickly as Solar did because nose work has helped her a lot. But Walter is still pretty worried. He's still not able to be outside. We still can't do vehicles. He's still, you know what I mean? So his progression is slower. And this is to illustrate the point. Not every dog's going to move at that point, at that speed. And And to be honest, I would have probably, and we're probably go a little slower with Walter, um, and help him, relax a little bit. Anyway, so there's probably a whole nother talk we can do on environmentally sensitive, because we all have them, and maybe we will. Um, Trazodone for anxiety. I have, so Blanca, I have used Trazodone successfully with my beagle that came from she came from the lab, the breeding lab in Vigo. It worked beautifully for her. However, I did Trazodone, but I also did a holistic, um I did the combination of a holistic solution, Comshen, and some liver, liver detox, and the Trazodone. And that helped her deal with her new life here. And, because she was in a crate for 3 months, she wouldn't come out of the crate. Noise, she was extremely stressed about noise, and everything else. And with that combination, so she was on Trazodone for a few months, and the holistic thing, and then we moved her off of that to just the holistic, and now it's been almost a year, little over a year that she's been on nothing. But that also speaks to her genetics. Normally, it doesn't move that fast.
Yeah, and I'm also going to say be careful, because Trazodone's the new hot drug.
Yep.
And quite honestly, prolonged use of Trazodone can be hallucinogenic. The dog can be looking at purple monsters in the corner, and it can be real freaky for him.
Yeah.
So if you notice if you choose the Trazodone route and you notice your dog like pawing at you or like looking off and staring at things that aren't there,
Yeah.
it really can cause some hallucinations. So
Yeah.
I'm not.
She was on it. She was on it for 4 months, and that was it. And then never. And then I kept her on the holistic, on the Comshen and the Liver Happy, and that's it. And then I eventually took her off of those, and that was it. She never needed anything more than that. But that also speaks to her genetics. Normally, if it would have, to Joanne's point, if it wouldn't have helped her, I would have definitely gone to fluoxetine and something more permanent if she wasn't making quick progress. The Trazodone, all it did was help her anxiety, and then I was able to get the training in. And she genetically was pretty good, so she moved along faster. Normally, that doesn't happen that way, because I put her on Trazodone and the herbs in October. So October, November, December, and January, I took her off of and kept her on for a couple of more months on the holistic stuff, but she moved very, very, very quickly. It was a very quick, like, once her anxiety and the training took over, it was very fast, and that's not typical. So genetically, she was a good candidate for it. But had I seen that it wasn't working after a month or so, I would have probably put her on something stronger, because that's actually what I was going to do, was just put her on Prozac. But the vet's like, well, let's try this and see what we get. And luckily, it was very short lived. It wasn't didn't take long, and it was pretty good for her. So I've used it successfully, but like Joanne says, you got to be careful about how you use it, when you use it, and all that stuff.
So I've seen it used, and I've seen it go both ways, where
Yep.
it makes the dog worse, or it helps the dog, or in some cases you have to adjust dosing, right? Because I had a dog who we've been working with for a while, and she's extremely environmentally sensitive, and it spins her up. So she'll stop and think about it, be aware, and then blah, and then just lose her ever-loving mind. And it's sad because she knows stuff. It's not that she's not intelligent. It seems like there's a bigger issue. So I referred her off for medication, because I feel like it's
Mhm.
a disorder in the brain, not making a connection, etc. But they're not going to do trazodone. Her original doctor said, try trazodone, see how that works. And then she's like, I don't feel comfortable with it because all it does is, and I gave her half a dose and she like crashed out. And I'm like, that's not conducive to learning,
Right.
because that's what we're trying to do here, right? Is change the idea of it. So,
Yeah. Or
Yeah,
just
and
reduce their anxiety a little bit, right?
Yeah, I do use it for fireworks and thunderstorms because I've been down the road of learning, and you know what? A really high dose of trazodone just to get you through it. That's where we're at right now because it's too much. So
But that's what I mean, used appropriately.
Yep.
So for my dog, it worked well for a short time, but she was genetically, it was easy. Had I had to keep her on it long term, I wouldn't have. I would have definitely gone to something else. But fortunately, a low dose with the homeopathic was really did the trick for her. But again, she was a genetically not. There was a lot of good to work with. She's occasionally gets a little worried about stuff, but she recovers very, very quickly. So we just do the training, and she's been doing great. Most of the people who see her don't even know that that's a start she had. But it was a very short period of time that I had to use it, and it was successful for me. But Joanne's right. There's some dogs, and that's what I mean. Every organism is different, and it's going to react different. And anything long term, you have to really consider, right? If that's going to be the best bet. So, all right, all. Thank you for tuning in. I know we could probably go on talking about this and showing you more information, and we will probably do a part 2 because this was a pretty popular topic. So we will plan another one and try it next time. All right. Good night.